Hi there, welcome. If you can hear me, would you let me know in the chat box? Okay. Couple more minutes before we get going. I'm super psyched for this. I've been working on this for a long time, so I'm so happy to finally share it with you. Thanks so much for being here. And while we are waiting, a couple of things. I'd love it if you would tell us where you are in the world and what you teach. And then also maybe just a little bit about, do you do Daily 5? Do you do literacy centers, something else? Just go ahead and type that in the chat box so I can see who all is here. Hello, Michelle, Amanda, welcome, Lynn, Lenore, Debbie, Carla, Dana, Teresa, Rachel, welcome. Hey, Sue, Becky from Brazil, Indiana. Sue, welcome. Doris, welcome. Donna, Nashville, welcome. Krista, welcome. Marla, I'm so glad you enjoyed the guided reading webinars. Let's see. Margie, welcome. Raquel, welcome. Judy, Rosemary. Let's see. Leticia. Julie, welcome. So many people in here from all over. So exciting to have you. Let's see. Marla, welcome. Jennifer, it's going so fast. Ellen, welcome. Ashley, Allison with 1L. All right. Angelina, welcome. Missy, welcome. Maria, welcome. Heather in Chicago, welcome. Hey, Taylor, Alice, Pam, Kristen, some California teachers, Literacy Centers and Daily 5. Melissa, welcome. Jacqueline is wanting to use Daily 5. Joanne, welcome. Jacqueline, welcome. Natalie, Jennifer, welcome. A couple of South Carolina teachers. Hey, Donna, welcome. Kelly, Carmen, Kay, Sherry, Kelly, Bree, Taffy. All right, I'm so excited that you all are here. If you're having tech issues, I'm going to go ahead and put up just these little tech help tips. You would just click the button to see just some general tips though. So they recommend using the Google Chrome browser. If that doesn't work for some reason, try a different browser. Go back to the original email, rejoin, usually just trying different things will solve the problem. The reconnect button is another option. You should see that on your end. Should something happen during the presentation, you should always be able to get back on with the reconnect button. And it is already time. So I definitely want to respect your time and get going. Thank you again for being here. Again, I am so excited you're here. I'm so excited to share with you. I have a lot of hopefully helpful stuff. So we are going to go ahead and dive in. I'm going to switch over to my slides. The first slide, couple of housekeeping items. There's a little delay. So whatever you're hearing me say right now, I actually said like 20 seconds ago. Just keep that in mind in the chat box. Speaking of the chat box, please definitely do use it. You know, add on to what I'm saying. Answer each other's questions. Ask questions. The chat box is there to benefit you, so definitely use it. It will scroll quickly, and I will for sure miss things, unfortunately, because there's so many teachers in here tonight, which is a great thing. I'm so glad you're here. And I know you can all benefit from each other's wisdom in the chat box, but I will miss things for sure. I'll stop periodically and answer the questions that I can. You may want to grab paper and pencil, jot down a few things. I did send out the slides ahead of time. You can request those again if you didn't get them for some reason, no problem. But you may want to jot a couple of things down. And I say this before I start any workshop, you know, I'm sharing my learning as a literacy specialist. Before that, I was a classroom teacher. I know that your school, your district may have different things that they require. Totally understand that. And of course, you have to do what you feel is best for the kids in front of you. So just some things to keep in mind. I'm going to put those tech help tips up once more. If you are having issues, try a different browser. Let's see, try the reconnect button. Just try different things. You can always go back to that email, and hopefully it will be smooth sailing for us tonight. So I know that a lot of you and I have talked before. I know that you've been on the workshops before, so welcome back. If you are new and we are not acquainted yet, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Allison. I'm a literacy specialist. My area of expertise is K2, pre-K2. I am working with pre-K this year. I actually started my teaching career teaching pre-K in the public schools, taught kinder for several years, moved up to first and second, and then I became a literacy specialist. This is my husband, Jonathan, and we moved pretty recently to the Nashville suburbs. We are, I don't know, I've lived all over, but I guess originally from the Midwest, Chicago suburbs. We have 2 little fur babies, Max and Lindsay. They love each other sometimes and they hate each other the rest of the time, but they're pretty cute. And yeah, so that's me. And you are in the right place today if you use literacy centers, Daily 5, another method for independent work, or even if you're just exploring the idea of literacy centers right now and you're not really sure how to structure your independent work, because whether you've been doing centers for years and years or you're super new to them, I hope that tonight you'll walk away with some new ideas and things to try. And I'm especially excited to share all of this information with you because from a personal standpoint, in the classroom, literacy centers was probably the #1 biggest struggle for me when it came to my instruction out of everything. And I think that's because, I mean, the fact is teaching 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds to work independently and be productive is just hard. I know so many of you can relate to that. So right now in the chat box, I would love it if you would let me know what your #1 biggest challenge is when it comes to implementing centers, Daily 5, or another type of independent work. Just go ahead and type, just one quick thing that you feel is really challenging right now, so hopefully we can address that. All right, so keeping all students on task and getting their best workout, accountability, independence, keeping them engaged, time, noise. Yes, yes, yes. So pretty much everything I'm seeing, we are going to address tonight. Awesome. See accountability, engaged, differentiating. Yep. So hopefully we are going to give you some ideas to go on with all of these challenges because I absolutely can relate to those same challenges. So we have a packed agenda tonight. I'm going to try not to talk too fast, but you will, as long as it records correctly, you will get a recording of this in case you want to revisit something. So first of all, I'm just going to share what my foundational beliefs about centers are, just so that you know where I'm coming from. Second, I'm going to show you, or just briefly touch on some different ways that you might manage centers. Then I'm going to share how I do centers in my classroom and kind of explain why I do them that way. We'll talk about making groups, making sure the kids actually know what they're supposed to do in the centers, holding them accountable and assessing them, which I know I saw in the chat box, so we'll definitely address that. Differentiation, also saw that in the chat box. Dealing with disengagement when the kids aren't engaged, a few organization tips, and then at the end, make sure to stick around to the end because if you are here live, I'm going to share a little bit about the literacy bundles that I just posted recently, and I'm going to be giving some of them away, but you have to be here live. So please stick around to the end. I would not want you to miss that. Periodically throughout all this, I will stop, I'll answer questions, and then again at the end, if I have not answered your question yet, just type it again in the chat box and I will answer as many questions as I can at that time. Okay, so before we get going, I think it's valuable. All of us are here because maybe, we think that centers are important. We know independent work is a priority for us, but I just want to touch briefly on what I believe about centers and also why I do literacy centers, because I think there's value in just revisiting this. Maybe we haven't thought about it for a while because thinking about why we do literacy centers can guide us in choosing our routines and our activities for literacy centers. So I use literacy centers because kids need practice with what they're learning during other parts of the literacy block. They need opportunities, I believe, for interaction and solo learning. I think there needs to be a balance. Like adults, some kids learn really well with others and some learn best by themselves. I think it's important to include a mix. And then they also need a chance to learn independence. For me, literacy centers are as much about the academic as they are like the behavioral and just getting them to get to a point where they can learn a little bit more independently. That's important. And we need literacy centers as teachers because we've got to have time to teach small groups or individual students. And we need to see how our kids are doing with what we're teaching, right? We need them to practice and we need to kind of see how that practice is going. So with all of that in mind, I believe, this is just my opinion, I believe that literacy centers should reflect what the kids are practicing during other parts of the literacy block. I believe that they should involve opportunities for the kids to learn with their peers and on their own. I don't believe that literacy centers should always be, a worksheet for every single activity. I believe they should allow for student choice in some areas, not all, but many. And then I also think that they should incorporate some level of play or playfulness and fun because we all want our kids to be engaged. And I think there are definitely ways that we can make literacy centers one of the most fun parts of the day. So when I think about literacy centers, I hope I'm not making you hungry, but I think about it like an ice cream sundae. So the ice cream, if you're going to eat an ice cream sundae, that's the foundation, right? You don't have an ice cream sundae without the ice cream. The ice cream, so to speak, of literacy centers, I consider to be reading, writing, and all the things that go along with that, speaking, and listening. And then I consider the toppings, the fun stuff, to be activities, games, and variety. And so if you think about literacy centers like this, it's a little bit, it's a little bit easier not to lose sight of what's important. There's so much out there on Pinterest or in the teacher store or whatever, and it's easy to be tempted because there are cute, fun activities that look great. And some of them, many of them are awesome, but we have to keep our learning goals for our students at the forefront because that's the ice cream, right? Without the ice cream, we have no ice cream sundae of literacy centers. So our learning goals have to be at the forefront when we're planning and choosing activities. So all of that said, there are many, many different ways to make literacy centers or independent work in the classroom. And there's so many options. So, are the kids going to choose the order of activities that they do, or are you going to choose? Are you going to have centers that are in fixed locations, or are they going to be portable where they can just take them back to their seats? Are you doing fixed rotation times where you say, okay, everybody's moving on to the next activity at this time? Or do kids do one thing and then they go and do something else when they're ready? Do you have a rotation and then they come back for a mini lesson and then they go back for another rotation and then they come back? Or do you do all your independent work in one block? There's so many different options here, and I know that all of us do different things. So we would be here all night if I talked in depth about all the different ways that you can do all of this stuff, centers, Daily 5. And I've tried many different strategies, trust me, so many different strategies to see what works best for me and my kids. And I honestly feel like if you're a newer teacher or even a very experienced teacher, trial and error is going to be how you figure out what fits best for you and your kids. I feel like there's no way around it. I'm going to share what works for me, but you're going to have to try it out and see how it feels. So tonight, as I said, even though there's so many different ways that you can do centers or Daily 5, tonight I'm going to focus on the way that I do things and why I do them this way. My way is definitely not the only way, of course, but I do hope that hearing how I think about my own strategy will help you think about your strategy for centers too, however you choose to implement them. So, diving into what I do, I have 6 centers and they're in fixed locations, meaning that the kids go to a certain place to do the writing center and a different place to do the word work center. And these 6 centers are independent reading, reading response, word work, a listening center, a writing center, partner reading. And then for kinder, I do like a dramatic play center that can also sometimes incorporate the arts, music, other things. So these are my centers. Even if your centers are different, no problem. You can absolutely adapt what I'm going to show you about each of these centers to however you do things. These are numbered and ordered intentionally because my kids go to 3 centers a day, and this provides them a balance of writing and reading. So here we have like independent reading, and then they write about their reading, and then they do a little word work. Or maybe they're listening, and then they're writing, and then they're reading. These are in order intentionally. You also probably noticed that I did not include a teacher station in this rotation. This is because I pull my guided reading or other small groups while the kids are in centers, but I pull the kids together from different centers. I will just call their names or their group name, and then they come to me. We are going to go in depth much more on this later on in the presentation, the issue of grouping. But I create groups for my kids to rotate through the centers, and then the groups are set up so that the kids have a similar ability partner and a different leveled partner that they can possibly work with. Again, we're going to talk more about this later. So let's imagine right now, I would love to take you into my classroom and show you exactly how I do things. Of course, that's not possible. But let's imagine right now that you are in my classroom and we're about to start centers. So I'm going to take you through step by step what is going on during that block of time. When I do want to mention, I do my centers all at once. And I know that many of you may do, one center and then you come back from mini lesson and one center and a mini lesson. I am a little bit slow maybe in getting my kids to clean up. So having them move from centers to the mini lesson, to centers to mini lesson, for me, it doesn't work real well. So that's why I block all of my independent work at once. So they're going center to center. There's no mini lessons in between. Not the right way or the wrong way of doing things. It's just how I do them. So it's time to start centers. I tell my kids to get their stuff. They get their independent book bags. They get their independent work folders. They bring these things to all centers. If you use my Literacy Centers bundles, then you'll see that many centers, even if they are not like the Independent Reading Center, many centers' activities will involve them using books or whatever from their bags. So that's why they just bring them with them to every center. It's really easy, and it cuts down a little bit on them having to go get stuff mid-center or mid-rotation. As I said, they each have an independent work folder. I like the sturdy plastic kind. They bring them with them to the center. If they have a recording sheet or something they're working on in writing, for example, they can put the finished product on the red sticker side. That's for the stuff that's done. That means that I can look at it, right? If it's something that's ongoing, because we all know kids do not finish necessarily their work in one center period. So if it's ongoing, they put it in the green side. I just teach them to check the green side of their folder before they get going on something new, especially in centers like the Writing Center, the Reading Response Center, where they very well may not be finished with something. All right, so my kids have got my stuff, or their stuff rather. They come back to the rug, and at this point, I've set aside about 5 to 10 minutes for a little whole group time. And this time is devoted to one of two things. First, it may be to introduce an activity that I've just put in centers. And when I say introduce, most of the time, 99% of the time I would say, this is not the first time that the kids have seen an activity. What I used to do is I used to, show kids how to do something and then model it, whatever, put it in centers. And I learned the hard way that that doesn't really work for most kids. So when I say that I'm introducing an activity, I'm actually showing kids how to take something that they've already done before, either in a whole group or small group, and do it as a centers activity. So again, this is 5 or 10 minutes. I'm showing the kids, hey, do you remember when we did this? Now you get to do it in centers, and let's review how to do it. Another thing I may be doing, if we need to review expectations or procedures, I do that then. That just is a kind of, day-to-day thing. How did we do the previous day? Did someone put Play-Doh in their nose? That's on an as-needs basis. So during this 5 to 10 minutes, when I introduce a new activity to centers, there is typically only one thing that I'm reviewing / introducing that day. So this means that I am not switching out all of my centers each week. What I used to do is Friday afternoon, I'd get all the new stuff for the next week. And then on Monday, I would explain and review all the new stuff, but I would lose my kids. They would be kind of like zoned out. It's a Monday anyway, so they're still a little sleepy. They just get this glazed over look, and they wouldn't really absorb what I was saying because I was throwing so much stuff on them for all the different centers. So now what I do instead is I dedicate one day per week to each center. And on that day, I will introduce any new activities for that one center. I try to keep it to just one totally new thing. They do have choices in their centers, so I might quickly review, say, hey, this is the new thing, but then there's also this and this in the center. But they're going to be things that they're really familiar with, they've done before. So looking at the schedule on a weekly basis, since I usually have like 6 or 7 centers, that does mean that I double up. But the independent reading and the listening center don't require a ton of teaching usually, so I usually do those in one day. Spreading out like this when you introduce new activities for centers also gives the kids this feeling like, hey, there's something new every single day. And even if they don't necessarily visit that center on that day, because my kids do not visit all the centers every day, they still see something new that they will eventually get to. And the days that you do these on, they honestly don't matter. In your freebie, there's kind of an explanation of this, and you can make your own schedule. You also don't actually have to change your planning if you're accustomed to doing it like I always plan on Thursdays. You can still plan all the new centers activities for the following week. It's just that you don't introduce them all on one day. Okay, so back to you're in my classroom, we're doing centers. I've now introduced, what is today? Today's Sunday. Okay, let's pretend it's Monday. I introduced the word work stuff or whatever. So now it's time for the kiddos to actually get to centers. I used to use a pocket chart for this, which you still can. Now with the interactive whiteboards, I like to have it up there. The kids know what their centers group is. That stays relatively stable, at least for a while, and I post the groups. I've got giraffes, lions, tigers, whatever here as an example. And they see, okay, so this is rotation 1. And I say, okay, look at where you're going first today, right? When I'm showing them the rotation board for the day, I also let them know who will be coming with me first. So they look at this and I'm like, okay, but the red guided reading group or whatever is coming with me first, just so that they know. So they know where they're going. I then dismiss them group by group and they get started. So now the kids are in centers and I'm at a guided reading table with my group. I start my timer. We have 15 minutes for me to work with students. And meanwhile, the other kids their groups, they're each in only one center during that 15 minutes. Once the kids get to those centers, they choose from 2 or 3 activities. So I know some teachers like to let the kids choose where they go, and that's another option, but I have them choose what they do in the center. Just easier for me, just the way my brain works. At the beginning of the year, when we're just kind of starting centers, we just start with like 1 or 2 choices. And then as the year goes on, I might have them, 2 or 3 choices, but I never want to do so many that it's just overwhelming. I'll add and rotate things out to keep them interesting. And I have these choice rings where they get to flip through and see what the options are for every single center except the listening center, because usually that's just like maybe choose a book or choose something, choose an app or whatever. So the kids know what activities are available to them in the center, again, because they have these choice rings. And so in my Literacy Centers bundle, if you use that, I have these kid-friendly directions cards that I put in the choice ring. This is a full page. I also have the half page, which is what I use usually. And these, like the half page sizes of these, are behind this front card. So on the directions card, the kids will see a little image here in the right-hand corner, and that represents the activity. So this is a punctuation mark scavenger hunt. The kids see a magnifying glass and an exclamation point, and then they see the written directions and the images, and they don't have to be able to read the words. A lot of kids won't be able to read them. You've already taught them the activities, so these little pictures are just to jog their memories and kind of remind them what they're supposed to do. So this choice ring really serves two purposes. One, to show the kids what their options are. And again, there's only 2 or 3 options usually, but 2, also to remind the kids how to do each option. Here you see one choice ring. I may have 2 choice rings in a center because let's say there's 4 or 6 kids going to be in the center. They're not all working together, but they all need to be able to see what their choices are, right? And I do not want them waiting on each other. So if I have 2 of these that are duplicates, they can, multiple kids can look at them. They're not waiting on each other. It just saves time. My rule with this is choose quickly or not at all. So at the very beginning of the year when we've just, centers are up and whatever, so not the very beginning, but, maybe 6 weeks into the year, centers are up, I will really watch them. And the rule is, you need to choose quickly or I will choose for you. So I'll kind of watch them. Obviously, that means I'm not as engaged with my group at first, but it is what it is. I watch them. I'll intervene. I'll take away the choice card and I'll tell them what they're doing. I'm firm about that. I don't say you get another chance. Like if I see that you're taking too long, I'm the adult. I'm taking that away from you and it is what it is. But they will learn really quickly not to mess around. And so then they can really enjoy their choices because they're not taking forever and they're getting into what they're supposed to be doing. Okay, so once they've made their choice, then it's time to get to work. So now I'm going to go through, generally speaking, what my kids are doing in each center. So my independent reading center, which was the first one, that's in the classroom library. But the kids are actually reading from their own book bags. I don't want them, reading something and then getting up and having to search through the classroom library every single time they need something new. Because like with the little ones, they read books so fast, they end up spending all of their time looking for new books. And kids moving around like that doesn't create that quieter, calmer atmosphere that I want to have in the independent reading center. So in the independent reading center, as you may have guessed, they read. The focus is on just reading or pretend reading. They need that practice. I don't have them do lengthy responses to what they read because at this age, they're usually kind of slow to write. I want them to get that reading practice in. So, they write something on a sticky note, or maybe they write like a 1-sentence response once in a while. But generally speaking, I want my kids reading the entire time when they're in the center. Now with a 15-minute center, which is what I do, that's a long time for a kindergartner or a beginning first grader to read independently, especially if they're not actually, really reading yet. So with kinders and beginning first graders, I actually have them spend the first 5 minutes of the center book shopping. As I said, they're bringing their book bags anyway, and then when they get to the center, they turn over a sand timer. This is a photo of a small one, but Lakeshore. I don't know if they still make them. I think they do. They make these big sand timers that I really like much better. But anyway, they have 5 minutes to check out new books. And then once they see that the sand has gone down, they have to settle down and read. You can do this with second graders too. Like at the beginning of the year, maybe their stamina just isn't at 15 minutes yet. But this is a way of, acknowledging their developmental needs. 15 minutes is a long time to read for the little ones. And it also accomplishes the task of getting them to choose new books. Okay, so as I mentioned, in the Independent Reading Center, the kids They, sticky notes, teeny responses, but they're not creating really long written responses. But the center they usually go to right after independent reading is the Reading Response Center. And this is where that text response happens, either through drawing or writing. The kids can be responding to texts that they read from their book bags, or it can be a book that you read to the class already. Before my kids start writing or drawing in the Reading Response Center, I have them talk to a partner to make a plan for their work in the center. I think it's so important that kids have an opportunity to talk and draw before they write because it gets them ready to do so. So in my Literacy Centers bundles, if you use those or make your own, I have these little sentence starter bubbles, and they just say things like, today I'm going to work on blank. Or today I'm writing about blank. So they talk to a partner to help plan their thoughts out before they write. And I will tell you, it does take some time for them to really become successful with this, productive, talk, and then get right to work. But once they get it down, it really can be effective and helpful. I do want to mention that for kinder, I don't start the Reading Response Center until like 16 weeks in. This can be just a harder center for them to grasp, and I prefer to have them visit, instead of the Reading Response Center, the Word Work Center twice in the rotation at the beginning of the year. So I double up on the Word Work Center just for kinder for the first 15 weeks of school, and then I back off one Word Work Center, and then they start this. So in kinder, we're doing so much work with their names, phonological awareness, letters, sounds. So it's just helpful to have them visit the Word Work Center twice while we're waiting for them to be a little bit more ready for the Reading Response Center. So if you have a Reading Response Center, if you incorporate it into other centers, you can do things like make a beginning, middle, end flip book about the book. Again, it can be something that they read or something that you read to them in class. They can do a little book review. It's really fun to have kids recommend books to each other because that's just so motivating and it gets them reading more. You can have them answer just a simple prompt or do something a little bit more long-term. Like this is a yearbook project from my second grade Literacy Centers bundle where they are writing just a little profile of the different characters that they meet in different books. And then they award superlatives at the end, like most likely to be president, or, this character is going to become a vet when they grow up because they love animals, stuff like that. Okay, so the Word Work Center is the third center on my list. And I actually have a separate dedicated time for word study where I'm seeing kids in small groups for instruction. This is separate from centers. So in centers, the Word Work Center is just another opportunity for them to practice what they're learning. If you do not have a word work or a phonics program already, I recommend Words Their Way. And then Jolly Phonics has some good chants and stuff for teaching kinders the letters for the first half of the year or so. So with the Word Work Center in kinder, this center is all about letters, phonological awareness, writing their names, and so on. And as the year progresses, it does turn more into actual working on words, as the name suggests, for those kids who are ready. In first and second grade, and again for some kids in late kinder, my kids in the Word Work Center are typically practicing the same words that they've been given to me, that they've been given by me rather, in their small group from word study. So I like Words Their Way. They have a sort about every week. They have those word cards that they're working on in their independent work folder. They're putting those cards in their folder. I also give them a list of the words too, just because some of the games I use, it's easier to have a list. And if you use my first or second Literacy Centers bundle or the word work component, you'll see that the majority of the activities are structured so that the kids bring those words that they're already learning. They have them in their folders, and then they play a game or do an activity with those words. So it's instant differentiation. Once you have that routine of always giving them the words to keep in their folders, you just put one game in the center, and they're all getting to practice words that are appropriate for where they are. So typically, my kids play games or do any activities that aren't independent work with a partner in the Word Work Center. Having them do it with like a partner instead of a group of 4 or 5 just helps keep the noise level down. If you use my word work games in the bundles, you definitely can have them play in a group of 4, but it will give your kids more opportunities for practice, and it'll kind of cut down on the noise level. I know a couple people said noise level was a challenge if you just have them do their activities in partners. So right now you might be wondering, well, what if the kids in my centers group aren't all working on the same words? How are they going to play these games together? Because they are interacting. So we're going to address that when we get to the grouping part, because after a lot of experimenting and thinking about it, I did find a way for them to be in mixed groups, but still have a partner that they could work with well in the Word Work Center. Okay, so we're not done going through the centers, but I just want to pause really quick here and see if I can answer a question or two. Let's see. Yes, I do. So some people are asking about a word work bundle. It's part, I'll show you more about this later, but it's part of my Big Literacy Center bundle, which I'll encourage you to purchase because it's got a huge discount. I'll tell you more about that later. I have a word work component in that. It's not a word study program, but it's just a lot of activities that are flexible and you can use with any program. Let's see. Okay, so Lindsay, this is a good question. Would you suggest not pulling a group at all until your students are good at working on their own in centers? And my answer is yes. Well, you're all going to get the freebie at the very end, but in that I'll kind of explain how at the beginning of the year I introduce centers. And a big part of that is teaching kids procedures and routines, and I'm not pulling groups. They're not actually working in centers. They're learning the activities. And then slowly I roll out the centers. And then once I feel like they are productive, that's when I pull groups, because it's not, I feel like sometimes we feel pressure to get into pulling groups so fast. And that's hard, but it's not, you're not setting yourself or the kids up for success if you just rush into it. It's important to take your time, I believe, and get things set up before you start pulling groups. Great question, Lindsay. If I missed your question, I will come back and do more later, so no worries. Okay, so next is the Listening Center. The Listening Center has changed. When I first started teaching, I had cassette tapes or a CD player, and now I use computers or tablets sometimes for the Listening Center. In your freebie, I've got a list of some suggested websites that you can check out for your Listening Center. And in this center, the focus is on having kids listen to text, as you might imagine. It's so simple, but it's also valuable because it exposes the kids to new vocabulary words. It models fluency for them, and you can even teach content area material like science or social studies if they're listening to that type of thing. That said, because the Listening Center is so simple, I want to make sure that my students are really engaged and they don't get bored of it as the year goes on. And I also want to have some kind of accountability measure so that I can see that they're actually thinking about the text that they listen to. So that's why I developed these little tracking systems for the Listening Center. If you use my Kindergarten Literacy Centers bundle, you'll find this little reading zoo system. It's very simple. Kids just color in a little circle every time they listen to a book. And then as the year goes on, you can also have them distinguish. I have another half sheet option where they do fiction versus nonfiction. If you like, I have a sheet for that too. And then once they fill up a half sheet, they get to color in an animal on their Reading Zoo page. So simple, but it just helps them see their progress throughout the year, and they love coloring in those animals. In my first grade system, I have a reading journey through outer space little project for them. So in this system, the kids write one sentence, just one, maybe draw a picture to answer a question about one text that they listen to in the Listening Center. So they may listen to multiple when they're in there, but I just have them do it for one text so that, again, we're focusing on listening and not, spending so long and having them respond. So anyway, they have these response booklets. They have different themes for different planets. They start with the sun and then they work their way out. They go through a booklet for each planet. And then they get a little stamp or a sticker on their sheet every time they complete a booklet. And at the end, they get a certificate. At the second grade level, I have something similar, but it's themed with like a travel theme. It's my reading trip around the world. And so I make them little passports. They get to fill out, just like in first grade, one page every time they visit the center. And then there's a different passport for each continent, and again, a certificate at the end. These things, if you use them, are relatively simple to set up once you start them at the beginning of the year. And you're not having to teach the kids like all sorts of new things throughout the year. You're definitely going to need to model the responses, but these systems are just really simple, fun ways to keep the kids interested and incorporate a little bit of accountability. So next up is the Writing Center. In the Writing Center, just like with the Reading Response Center, my kids have to look in their independent work folder to see if maybe they have something unfinished from last time before they start something new, as I mentioned before. And if they're ready to start something new, they are going to look through something called the example binder, which I'll show you in a second. And then they make a plan with a partner. Just like with the Reading Response Center, they tell their partner what they're going to write about or make that day. So I do have a separate block of time that's not during centers when I do my writing instruction, and the kids write at that time. I think it's important, in my opinion, to have a focused time where you teach writing, the kids work on it, and you pull small groups or confer, and then you wrap things up. I think having that dedicated time is important as long as you have time for it. So in the Writing Center, I want to incorporate the genre that we're working on during that separate writing block, but I like to include, quick fun activities and provide some variety. So I want to give them a chance to practice what they're working on, of course. I want it to be relevant, but I still want to change things up to keep them interested. So for example, let's say we're working on some type of letter writing. Then maybe one of their choices in the Writing Center is to make a postcard. Or maybe we're working on opinion pieces in our writing block. So then in the Writing Center, they get to do these little this or that opinion pieces where they choose between, to live in a place that's always hot or to live in a place that's always cold. So they're practicing in the genre, but it's just a little fun variation on maybe what we're doing in the writing block. If you use my Literacy Centers bundle, then you'll see that you have lots of options. They're designed to be super flexible so that you can match whatever you're teaching in your writing block to the activities in the Writing Center. So before I was talking about my kid-friendly directions cards and how I use those to show my students what to do and let them choose activities, in the Writing Center, I do something a little different. I don't use those direction cards rings because I have something that I call an example binder. So I found that in the Writing Center, it's really helpful to show my kids actual work examples so that they can see what's expected. And of course, I want to remind them how to make the project and give them ideas to help them. So that's how I kind of came up with the example binder. So it's just a thin binder. I have page protector sheets in it. And each writing project or choice that they have is in one page protector sheet. So it's a really thin binder. Like there's going to be just like 3 sheets in it at once. I don't put all the things that we do throughout the year in there because that would be overwhelming. So I rotate the sheets in and out based upon, what their choices are for the center at that time. And on one side of the page protector, I put a sheet that has a photo of a completed project. And the writing projects that I use are pretty open-ended, so kids really shouldn't be able to copy or shouldn't need to copy whatever the example photo is. It's just a starting point. And then on the other side of the page protector, I put this, it's just ideas for their writing or whatever, tips, which is just like a checklist of what they should do. So it's a double-sided thing for each project. Again, there's only like 2 to 4 of these pages in the binder at a given time. I keep the rest of my pages in a different binder and rotate them in. And so if you have my Literacy Centers bundles, all the stuff that you need for making these, it's already done for you. In addition to the example binder, lots of stuff in the Writing Center, I also have some different supports or things to help them with their writing. And I've tried different things, but my preference now is to display all of the different tools I have for them with a trifold board or even just a regular poster board. And these things are plastic page protectors, and I glued the back to them. You can use as many or as few as you want. But the nice thing about this is I can switch in and out the different sheets throughout the year, right? We all know that our kids' needs change as the year progresses. And so we want to challenge them, keep the supports relevant to their needs. So you can just slide in here things like an alphabet chart, word lists. Here I have, school words, playground words, family words, fall words. There's a days of the week list, an editing checklist. It's so easy to change out because all you have to do is take the sheet out and put a new one in. Okay, now let's talk about the Partner Reading Center. In the Partner Reading Center, my kids read or pretend read with a partner. I teach them different ways to read together. They can echo read, choral read, take turns reading, make up a story together, so many options. This really works even with kindergarteners who can't read yet. You just have to teach them and model different ways to read together. After the kids read with a partner, then they get to choose a short activity to do together. So those choices are, again, on the ring of kid-friendly directions, so they see what to do. Something simple like they play letter detective and they search for letters. Or they use the popsicle stick puppets I've included to retell the story. Or they, choose part of the text and they reread it to each other and they give each other feedback on their fluency. Or this is one of my favorites, is from my second grade set. They play two truths and a lie, also known as two facts and a fib. But they each choose two things that are true from the text and make up one that's not. And then they read them to each other and have to guess what's what. Obviously, this is more appropriate for second grade when they can write more quickly. But these are all just quick little things that they can do after they've read either a book or part of a text together. And then last but not least, I did mention that I have a dramatic play literacy center in kinder. You can incorporate music, art, science. This is just a flexible center where you can integrate literacy with the arts or other subject matter. I do think play is so important, especially at the kindergarten, first grade level. I do like to have that little kitchen in my room. You can have the kids do things that do involve literacy, like make a menu, set up a little restaurant, play grocery store, make signs for the food. I have a blog post all about this that's linked to in the freebie, so you can definitely get more ideas from that. And I also want to mention, if you have my Kinder Literacy Centers bundle, I will be adding props for this center to the bundle in October. Okay, so that was all the centers. So if you recall, before I started talking about all that, I was walking you through what the center rotations look like. So let's imagine one rotation is over, the 15-minute timer has gone off. I've been teaching my guided reading group, and the rest of the kids have been working each just in one center. Now I set the timer again. My kids know that they have 3 minutes to clean up. And when they're finished cleaning, they sit and they point to the next center. One finger goes on their lips to show that they're quiet, and the other one just points to where they're going. So I know that they are ready to rotate and that they know where they're going. And so I'm providing positive feedback. This group is ready. I see this group is ready. The 3-minute timer goes off, and then they're supposed to be all done, sitting and ready to move. I name who's coming to me, and then they rotate. So remember, they know where to go because I have this rotation chart set up. So we're on rotation 2. That's where their group goes. Repeat exactly what we just talked about. And then we have rotation 3, and that is it, except after round 3, everybody cleans up. They come to the rug, and we have sharing time. I do allow them to bring one product from their independent work folder or a book from their book bag that they would like to share, and they have about 5 minutes to share with a partner. After that, I'll have 1 or 2 kids share something with the whole class. And sharing time, it creates an audience for their writing products, or any sticky notes they may have written while reading, stuff like that. And it's tempting to skip this part if you're short on time, but the kids love it. And it gives them an authentic audience for the stuff that they're doing and making in centers. Now, if their behavior was way off during centers, I will take sharing time away as a consequence. but I try to avoid doing that too often so it actually means something when I do take it away. All right, I'll try to pick up a question. Emma, yes, all 3 rotations are 15 minutes each. And Lisa, another good question. Do you provide the books in partner reading? Okay, so Lisa, I give them some like guided choice in what they're putting in their book bags. Half the books can be from anywhere in the center or anywhere in the classroom library, and half the books can be from like choices for their specific guided reading group. So they have that in their book bag already. So they're getting a little bit of guidance there, but with kinder and first grade, when they can't read yet, I'm reading lots of fairy tales and things. And so I put those books in the Partner Reading Center so that they have stuff that they can pretend read that they've seen before. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so now I'm actually going to show you a video on YouTube of me explaining, whoops, I jumped ahead. Let's talk about making groups, right? So before I show you the video about making groups that work has definitely been a challenge for me. In some centers, I wanted my kids to be able to learn from each other. So the lower kids would be able to work with someone who was a bit higher than them. And in other centers, like the WordWork Center in particular, I needed kids to be at the same level or close to it so that they could work on the same skill together. So I needed some of both. So I experimented with a lot of different things. 1 year I had kids in same ability groups where they just rotated with their guided reading group. And that wasn't great because it didn't give the kids a chance to work with other kids and learn from each other. And then the low groups really struggled. I also did mixed ability groups, but sometimes the kids were on such different levels in a group that it didn't go well. So eventually I came up with a strategy that allows kids to sometimes work with peers of different abilities and sometimes work with peers that are on their same level. So in this system that I kind of designed for myself, I can pull students from different groups, for guided reading when they come to me, without usually messing up the center's activity or leaving someone without a partner. So now I want to show you the video. I posted this on my blog a few weeks ago, but I just think it's the easiest way for me to explain my system because in the video, I'm moving things around and showing you things. So now you're going to see me change screens in order to put the video on. But after the video is over, of course, I'll switch back and I'll answer any questions that you might have. So let me pull up this video. Okay. Go. Oh, here we go. All right, so there it is. I know you're probably just seeing blank right now. I'm going to press play, and you should hear me talk, but it's not me talking live. It's just the video. Okay, so in order to explain how I like to make it work, I'm going to use some really round, ideal numbers just to show you what it would look like in a perfect scenario. So over here, I have these guided reading groups. I have 4 of them, and there are 6 kids in each group. And the red group is the lowest, and the green group is the highest. So they're ranked from lowest to highest. And so what I want to create is I want to take these same kiddos, 24 in my class, and make 6 different groups that will go to centers together. And I have a couple of things to think about. First of all, when I do centers, I like to have kids work in partnerships. So even if there's 4 kids in a centers group, which is going to be the case in this scenario, I still like to have them work with partners because I just feel like it's easier for them to get along, and also it reduces the noise level. So I want to have kids in groups where they can work in partners. I also want them to have an option of working with a partner who is about the same ability as them, because that makes things like playing word study games easier. but I also want them to have opportunities to work with someone who is, a little bit higher or a little bit lower with that, little bit lower than them, so that they can learn from each other. And the last consideration I have to think about is the fact that because kids are not going to centers with their same guided reading groups, when I poll for a guided reading group, I need to not mess up the activity. So, for example, if I pull a group and there's only one child left and it's a partner activity, then I mess up that activity. So I need to make sure that when I pull a group, even though the groups may change and I can, adjust these as necessary, I need to make sure that generally speaking, when I pull a group, it's not going to, ruin the activity that I planned. All right, so the first group I'm going to make is a group of 2 kiddos from the red group and then 2 kiddos from the yellow group. And the reason why I'm not pulling from the orange group or the green group is because I want to create a gap in ability that is significant but not too significant. So now we have this group where, 2 kids can work together when I want them to work, for example, studying words. And these guys can work together when it's an activity that works best with same or similar ability pairings. But at the same time, when they go to a center, if it's the partner reading center, then I might have them work in mixed ability partnerships by just telling them, okay, I want you to work from someone who is not in your guided reading group. So that gives me lots of options. The other nice thing is that if I pull either the red group or the yellow group for guided reading, that won't affect the activity because I'll still have 2 kids that are left there and can work together. So I'm going to actually create 2 more of these same or very similar groups. So each one of these circles represents a kiddo. I can't remember if I said that or not. And then I'm basically going to do the same thing for the orange and green group. Again, I'm creating a gap that's significant when I want them to work in, mixed ability pairings, but not too significant because I don't want kids to be working together who are, so much higher or so much lower than each other that they really can't learn from each other or teach each other well. Oops. Okay, so that got messed up. We're just going to clone this little kiddo. Okay, so I'm going to pause that here and switch back over. Couple of things. First, there's a link to a post that kind of explains like how to do it again. The video is in there if you want to rewatch, if you had volume issues or anything like that. You can rewatch it. And there's another video that explains what to do if your numbers are not even and perfect. I just kind of wanted to give you the idea of what it looks like when your numbers are perfect, and then you can adjust accordingly. So right now, hopefully you guys can hear me. Can't hear. If you did miss the video for whatever reason, again, there's a link to it in your freebie, so not to worry. I also do want to mention, if you use this system, you can give the kids numbers or shapes in their little group of 4 and say, okay, so at the Word Work Center, the squares and the triangles are going to work together, but at the Partner Reading Center, the triangles and the rectangles are worked together, stuff like that, just so that they get a mix of working with same ability and different ability peers. At least I do not meet with every guided reading group every day. So Jordan says, do you keep the groups like this for all of the centers? So the 2 red kids and the 2 yellow kids will rotate through all of the centers together? Yes, that's correct. Because then within the centers, I can say, okay, they're red, you guys work together. But at different centers, okay, yellow and red, you guys work together. It allows me to keep those groups consistent so I don't lose my mind with having them do so many different groups. But it allows me to also determine, what kind of kids are working together in the individual centers. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, now let's shift gears and talk about making sure that kids know what to do at their centers. I feel like kids forgetting or not doing the activities correctly has been one of the biggest problems that I've dealt with personally. So first and foremost, the hardest lesson I've had to learn is that my kids have to practice any activity we do in whole group and or small group before I introduce it to centers. So this means that I'm constantly looking a week or two ahead on my centers plan. I just kind of did a screenshot of the schedule in my first grade partner reading center. So let's say that it's like week 13 or 14 of school, and I know that in week 15 in the partner reading center, I'm planning to do this activity. It's an I Spy game. The kids read a book together, and then they play I Spy with saying things like, I spy a word that ends with ing. So I know I want to do that in week 15, right? I've planned ahead during week 13 and 14. During whole group, I play that same I Spy game with my kids as a whole group. It only takes a minute. It can even be like a good transition activity, but I make sure that they've played it with me before they play it with each other. That experience beforehand is so important to ensuring that they're successful with it independently. So using this strategy, if you do this for pre-teaching centers activities, that means that if you do like a skill of the week type of thing in your whole group instruction, your kids may not always be practicing that exact skill that same week. So they may practice the next week. For example, let's say this week you're doing retelling, right? Or I'm doing retelling. I'm teaching retelling this week. On Monday, I'm probably not going to throw in a retelling center for them because we haven't done it yet this school year. I haven't modeled. So even though that's the skill I'm working on in whole group, they're not ready to do anything with it independently. Maybe by Wednesday, I can, incorporate that into centers. But I'm not starting off with it right off the bat. They need that initial instruction in order to be really successful when they're practicing, a retelling activity on their own. So then if this week is retelling, then they may not be doing a whole lot of it on their own until next week in centers. So it's kind of a week behind in a way. Of course, it's up to you to decide what's best, but that's just kind of my 2 cents on that. So whether you use my kid-friendly directions from My Literacy Bundles or you make your own, having visual directions is so helpful in making sure that kids know what to do. And when you're teaching the activity, definitely refer to those directions so that when they see them in the center, the cards actually mean something to them. Again, it does not matter if your kids can read or not. Just seeing like these little pictures can help jog their memories because, again, they already know how to do this activity. I mentioned this before, but when kids are producing something, it's really helpful for them to see an example. You can create an example binder like I do for the Writing Center. This is an example of a reading response from the Reading Response Center. Just show them examples. And you can expect that they might produce similar things at first, but over time, you can encourage them to create more original work. Consistency also helps make sure that kids remember what to do. I feel like with centers, it's a constant battle for us between we want to keep things consistent, but we need to change things up so that they don't get bored. And so one solution that I've found, at least with the WordWorks Center, where there are a lot of games, is to create different versions of the same game. So the different version can be used to focus on a different skill. Like here with this example of a kindergarten activity, the game is roll and do. It's the same, but when they play earlier in the year, say the first sound in whatever word it is. But when they play later, it's just read the word out loud. So the directions stay the same. They already know how to do it, but it's a different skill. Or you can just have a different seasonal or holiday theme, like with my first and second grade games from the bundles. So that way you just switch out the printable game board and voila, the center looks new to them. You introduce it to them in an exciting way. But the kids, for example, they still know how to play spell and score. It's just got a fall theme or a St. Patrick's Day theme or whatever. They know the rules. It's just like a new way to keep things fresh for them. One little last thing I want to mention when it comes to making sure that kids do know what to do is to use technology. One big issue for me in the Reading Response Center is that my kids, especially with kinders and first graders, they forget what they're supposed to draw and write about, right? That's not surprising. A lot of them can't read what the prompt is, or they can't read all the words. So what I did is I said, okay, these are going to be the prompts for the year. And I rotate between them, of course, but I created a video for each prompt that reads them the prompt. It reads them an example, and then it reads them the prompt again. If you have My Centers bundles, then you have the links to these. You just put up a tablet or a computer, laptop in the center, they click the video, and they can see what they're supposed to respond to. Another thing you can do if you use an app like Seesaw, got a blog post all about it that you can see in your freebie. But if you use something like Seesaw, create a voice recording of you recording the prompt. They can listen to it in the center if they forget what they're supposed to draw or write about. So now let's talk a little bit about that tricky issue of holding kids accountable and assessing their work in literacy centers. So here's the thing about literacy centers. The purpose of them is to get kids to practice, right? And I don't know about you, but when I practice something, I'm not always doing it completely right unless I have, somebody who's an expert to help me. So your kids, when they're working in literacy centers, they're not going to do everything correctly either. This goes for their work in centers and their behavior. This is learning time. As much of a perfectionist as I can be personally, I can't expect their learning or their behavior during centers to be flawless. It's just not realistic. At the same time, I do need to be able to see how my kids are doing as they practice. It's not a free-for-all. I'm not just going to cross my fingers, close my eyes, and hope for the best. I do need to have some way of checking in with the kids to see how they're doing. And this is also important for making sure that the kids know that they actually need to be doing what I'm asking them to do. So I need to have ways for monitoring my students' behavior, getting some work samples, and giving them feedback. One way of checking in is just by looking over their written products. That's probably the easiest one, right? Writing Center, Reading Response Center, other centers you may have, they may have written products that you can look over. Like I talked about earlier, the kids put their finished work in the red side, and that tells me that I can review those things. I do so once per week. As I review them, I may write like a little note on them, but it's not usually like a formal grade. Again, what they're working on is practice, so I want to give them feedback, but not treat their work like, this was their only chance to prove to me that they know this. For my own purposes, I will write down how they're doing on something like this checklist, and I've got a couple of these checklists for you in the freebie. Speaking of the checklist, you'll also notice that there are components of it where I assess student behavior. Learning to be productive and get along with their peers is just as important, in my opinion, as the actual work that the kids produce. Again, I don't expect perfect behavior when they start centers. It's up to me to teach it. So what I do to kind of see how they're doing behaviorally is I'll just pick like 1 or 2 kids a day to observe every day, or not every day, that one day during centers. So I get up, maybe once, maybe twice from guided reading so that I can, from a distance, see what that one child is doing that I've chosen to observe and maybe mark down like one thing on the checklist. It's honestly really darn hard to do that, especially when you're focused on your guided reading group. But unless you have an aide who can maybe help you out with this, it's important to be able to observe what the kids are actually doing in centers, even if it's just 1 or 2 kids a day. It's also super valuable to have the kids self-assess, maybe once a week, how they're doing with their work. And this self-assessment form is in your freebie. Not every center activity that I use has a solid accountability piece. There's not a recording sheet or a worksheet for everything. Again, literacy centers are a time for practice. There's so much value in just having them read a book. I definitely want to check in with kids for sure, but if you have a recording sheet or they have to produce something for every single little thing they do, that can take away from other things like them actually practicing reading. That said, if you have administrators who are super into accountability, try using technology with those center activities that wouldn't ordinarily have a written product. So kids can make a video of themselves retelling or record their reading. They can take a photo of words. They make them with magnetic letters or whatever. Have them take a photo, no problem. I highly recommend the Seesaw app for doing all of this. If your administrators are demanding accountability for every center, then tell them, I need iPads so that I can keep things appropriate, but still, have the accountability piece. Do a Donors Choose project for it. Technology really can help to make sure that you can still do the centers that kids need, but also see what they're doing because they can take photos and videos and all that good stuff. All right, I think I'm gonna skip over questions for now. I do want to keep rolling because we have a bit more to share and we've got that giveaway coming up. All right, so differentiation ideas. I know a lot of us mentioned that in the chat that was a priority for you. So I do want to say that not all of my centers are differentiated. Some things like the Independent Reading Center or Partner Reading Center are kind of differentiated automatically because, like I said before, I have those procedures in place to make sure that kids have in their book bags books that are a good fit for them, and that's what they are reading in those centers. So the WordWorks Center, at least in first and second grade, is also automatically differentiated because, again, the kids are bringing those words to the center for so many activities. So I know then that they're all playing games and stuff with words that are right for their zone of proximal development. When I do have to differentiate, though, there's a lot of different ways to do it, and I like to use color coding. You can put words or other materials in plastic baggies with these yard sale stickers, get them on Amazon. These are little lunch meat containers that I was hoarding for a long time and washed out and put little stickers on them. You can do colored paper. I color code my guided reading group, so it works really well. You can do like different folders for different writing prompts. Color is really helpful when you do want to differentiate and have different materials. So now let's talk about what we can do when the kids are off task or they seem bored or they're just goofing around. So this is just so simple, but maybe it'll make you think. Treat the activities that the kids are getting to do on their own as this big privilege. Call things new, even if they're really just different versions of the other things you've done. Present it in a way so that, oh my goodness, like you've been doing so well with this. Now I think you can do it on your own. Just the way you present it. It's very simple, but just presenting things that way, it makes a big difference. We work with the little ones, or most of us do on this workshop right now, and they get excited about little stuff. So I say milk it. I remember one time when I was teaching kindergarten, I had a little girl who, Carolina was her name. She was having trouble just adjusting to kindergarten at the beginning of the year. It was like a couple weeks in, and one morning her mom was there and she was crying. And I kind of overheard her talking to her mom, and her mom was talking to her. She was like, well, kindergarten, isn't kindergarten fun? She was like, yeah, Mrs. Ryan has surprises for us every day. And I just had to laugh because it was the beginning of kindergarten. I wasn't really introducing anything that amazing, but I just sort of presented things as surprises and special. And so if you present activities that way, a lot of your kids will kind of buy into it, and they will be more likely to be interested in what they're doing in centers. So even, if you do a fabulous job of that, it doesn't mean that the kids are necessarily all going to be on task all the time. That they're all going to be engaged. So if I notice a problem with engagement, first I try to figure out, is it like a lot of the kids or is it just some? And so then what I'll do is a little bit of sneaky spying, I guess. I'll like step back and not really allow the kids to see me, but I'll just observe what they're doing. And while I'm observing, I'm asking myself, what is going wrong? Is it the grouping of kids? Do they understand the activities? Are the activities too difficult or too easy? Because sometimes what initially looks like bad behavior can just be the kids are not engaged because it's too difficult or it's too easy. So these are all things that I ask myself. And then based upon, my observations, I can take one of many different actions. I can change up my groups. I can reteach general expectations or specific activities. I can figure out how I can better differentiate, maybe use one of those strategies that I just showed you with all the color coding. Maybe I need to change out my materials more, or maybe I need to change them out less frequently because the kids are overwhelmed and they don't remember what to do. These are all things that I kind of ask myself if the kids are not engaged. Just another little thing, just remember that teaching behavior is part of our job. And so I totally can get so frustrated when they're not doing what they're supposed to do in literacy centers, because that's my time to teach guided reading and that's precious. But at the same time, part of them learning literacy centers is learning behavior, right? That's an important part of it. So even though I have to take time out of guided reading or small groups to teach that behavior, that's just kind of, part of the job. All right. So Tammy says, how often do you change your center groups? They change. So my guided reading groups change. I don't have like a schedule. I'll say I reevaluate at least once a month, so I can kind of change when I change the guided reading groups. Other than that, it's just kind of on an as needs basis, like maybe who's working well together, who's not working well together. I don't necessarily have a set schedule. I do kind of look to make sure that I'm naturally moving things around as kids either go to different guided reading groups or, just have different needs throughout the year, so that they're not always working with the same people. All right, so there's lots of different ways to get organized, of course, but I'm just going to share my way. It's pretty simple, honestly, nothing fancy. So I have a binder for each center. Again, I have 6 centers, so like this is the partner reading binder. In the front of the binder, I've got a list of all my materials. And I do this, maybe you don't need this, but I do this because I never remember what I did the previous year. So that's half of my issue when I'm planning with centers. I just needed a place to be like, okay, these are the activities, now I can pick one. So I have that list first. The second thing I have is a schedule. This is from, again, my Literacy Centers bundles. I plan out week by week what I'm going to introduce, again, so that I can be ahead and constantly looking like, hey, what's coming up? What do I need to be teaching now? Next in the binder, I have lesson plans that are designed to teach procedures. I have them in here because I use them at the beginning of the year, every year, but then I also need to revisit them sometimes occasionally. Next, I have the materials for each core activity. And so I took a picture of these I Spy games for you. This is from my first grade bundle, yeah. And I'll have a cover sheet that just explains what the center is. And if you're using my bundles, and you're gonna go print stuff, I would just print the cover sheets first. Because the cover sheets will walk you through like, hey, these are different ways to vary the center. And in my bundle, you'll see that there are lots of materials, but you don't have to print them all. I would say if you want to print stuff, just print the cover sheet, read through it, see what you might want to go back to the PDF and print, because this will kind of tell you what you might want. In my binder, when I do have everything printed out, in the page protectors, I'll have the cover sheet. I'll have a lesson plan that introduces the center activity, kid-friendly directions, and then any masters for if there's any printable materials. Okay, so those are the masters. I take them to the copy room. I make copies. If the center activity is not currently in use, then the stuff just goes in the manila folder and it goes in one of these bins. When it is time for the kids to use it, that stuff comes out of that manila folder. This activity just happened to have a manila folder. I should have put a different photo, but that stuff that the kids are going to use goes in their bin. So I have my bins and then I have their bins. And these are nice because they fit like construction paper and larger pieces of paper too. I do have the link for this in your freebie. All right, so we have gone through a ton of stuff tonight. Throughout the presentation, I've been referring to my Literacy Centers bundles, so now I want to take a little bit of time to tell you more about them, and I want to give away a few of these bundles, again, to those of you who are attending live. So I have the bundles for kindergarten, first, and second grade. Each bundle has materials for all 6 of the centers I've talked about: the Partner Reading Center, Independent Reading Center, Reading Response, Writing Center, Listening Center, and WordWork Center. Now, do you have to use all 6 of these centers if you use this resource? No, maybe you have a Poetry Center. That's fine. Like, there are activities from like the Partner Reading or Independent Reading Center that you can do in the Poetry Center. You can choose what works best for you. I just have them organized this way, but they're very flexible. These activities are kid approved. My kiddos have given them the thumbs up. They're designed to be really meaningful. So going back to that original metaphor that I mentioned about the ice cream sundae, reading, writing, speaking, and listening are the basis of these centers. So there are fun little twists and activities that will keep the kids interested throughout the year. You know, these resources are designed to last all year long and then some. And you'll definitely be able to choose activities that you like best. Because when I took the time to put these all together, I wanted to present so many different options and variations so that you can choose what fits your curriculum and the centers that you like to have, whether you use Literacy Centers or Daily 5. And I know that it takes so much time to differentiate centers, like we talked about. So these materials do have differentiation options built in. I was talking about that like cover sheet that explains the center. There's always a part about differentiation. And then I also include variations of materials so you can really easily meet your kids' needs and change things up. So this is just an example. This is like a word spinner activity, simple short vowel word families, or we've got some like beginning trigraph blends and other things going on here. So similar activity, but different levels. And we've also talked a lot about how it can be hard to get the kids to remember what they're supposed to do in each center. So that's why every single activity has these kid-friendly directions. For the Writing Center, I have these resources so you can just print and make your example binder. They've got real photos and a checklist so that the kids know what to do. And you know, I know that you might already have some centers that you use. And I also know that you can go on Pinterest and find a million more centers. But I designed this resource so carefully so that it's so much more than that. This is an organized system that creates the structure and consistency that your kids need and that you need. Because I really want to help you stop that endless search for Literacy Center activities and finally get all your stuff in one place. And before I do the giveaway, I do want to mention that if you purchase or win in the giveaway one of these bundles by Friday, September 22nd, you are also going to get a bonus, and the bonus is not going to be available after that date, after the 22nd. So the bonus is going to be just an invitation, totally optional, but I would love to have you in my coaching group for the months of October and November. So in the coaching group, I'm going to give you personal help with rolling out these centers, whether you want to like implement every single little thing or just some things. I'm going to walk you through step by step how to use these materials. So as part of the bonus, we're going to have a brand new Facebook group that's just for this purpose. I'll post videos in there. I'm going to do a little weekly just blurb of this is what you can do this week to roll things out. These tips are going to be adaptable. So if you're using Daily 5 or something else, you 100% are going to benefit from it. So as part of the group, you're also going to get invitations to 2 private webinars. There's going to be one in October and one in November. We'll vote on dates. This webinar is only going to be open to you guys who are in the coaching group who have purchased a bundle before September 22nd, because I want it to be really personal. I want to answer your questions. I want to help talk you through any challenges you're facing. So one other thing as part of the bonus, you can also choose if you want to get the weekly tips emailed to you. I am going to post them in the Facebook group. You can also just get an email with them. And I am super excited to host this group. I really want to work closely with you and support you as you implement the center's materials. So let's do the giveaway. I am going to find the list of everybody who's here tonight. And the way I do it is I just kind of randomly pull names. If you hear your name, only if you hear your name, please just say, I'm here in the box. If you do not hear your name, please do not say I'm here. And so then if I pull your name, tell me that you're here, and then email me and let me know which grade level you need. Because again, we've got the kinder, the first, and the second grade option. So I'm going to need, if you win, I'm going to need you to email me and let me know which one you want. All right, first winner, Kaylee. Her email is kaylee.brazil@yahoo.com. Kaylee, if you are here, just say, I'm here. Let's see who else we've got. I've got Ashley. The email is ahasart01@gmail.com. Tyler T. Littman 614@gmail.com. Gwen SCOMC@yahoo.com. Megan, it's Sowers ME, I think, @gmail.com. I'm not seeing anybody. Sherry Nunn @hallco.org. Michelle Bushman @gmail.com. Gwen is here. Woohoo! Try to see if I can get one more winner. Paula P. Johnson @gpsne.org. Alicia from Nashville is here and we'll take it. Judith JUDIFC @verizon.net. Just going to call one or two more. Irene.Bowker @lskySD.ca. And I'm going to call just two more. Stacy, it's SCROXTON01@gmail.com, and Connie Wu @hotmail.com. If I called your name and you are live, please let me know and please email me. If you did not win, I still want to have you in the coaching group. I still want to have you have these materials available to you. So all of these bundles are over 40% off through this Friday, September 22nd. I'm going to go ahead and post the link here, but it will also be emailed to you. Make sure that you buy before the 22nd though, because after the 22nd, the bonus invitation is going to be removed from the bundle. I really want to have you in the group. So I hope that you will make the decision before the 22nd. And now I would like to share the freebie. Again, same thing with the Literacy Centers link. If it doesn't work for you for whatever reason, or you're on your phone, it is going to be emailed to you. I believe I have it set up so that it'll go out in about half an hour. So there should be your free download. All right, so I know that I missed a bunch of questions. Definitely retype your question if I did miss it and you're still wondering about it. I am going to do a Facebook Live with other questions. I'll email you about that like on Thursday. If you can stay, please do so. I'd love to answer what questions you have, either about just literacy centers in general or about these. I'm happy to answer them. If you do have to leave us, thank you so much for being here. I hope you got some new ideas, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. But if you're still here, feel free to type your questions so that I can try to answer as many of them as I can. Good, Teresa. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Thank you, Michelle. Okay, Donna, how many kinders would you put in a literacy center group? So I didn't talk too much about this, Donna, but basically The group itself might have 4 or 6 kids that are in the center, but I really only ever have them work with a partner because the noise level gets to be so high. You can also, Donna, separate out centers. So maybe if you use my stuff or whatever for your partner reading center, maybe you have like a pocket chart center and then you just have a regular partner reading center. So they're partner activities, but you separate them out. If you have a lot of kids, if you physically separate out the spaces and stick to partners, that will definitely help. I like to have like 4 kids in the group, generally speaking, Donna, as long as my class size is like 24. Athena, yes, a certificate is coming for you in that email. If you haven't gotten stuff from me by tomorrow night, just respond to one of those reminder emails and let me know, but wait until tomorrow night because there are a couple of things that are going to come out to you, but they haven't been sent out yet. Tommy, where do you live? Are you in the Nashville area? Did I miss that? Okay, so Lindsay, this is a good question. She says, once I purchase the set, will you automatically put my name in your coaching group, or do I need to send you an email? So unfortunately, TPT doesn't allow me to see. I'll put up the link again. It doesn't allow me to see really who is bought or, people's email addresses or whatever. So in the bundle, once you unzip it, you're going to have to unzip it. There's going to be a file that just says bonus. And in the bonus file, it just says, hey, this form is what you fill out. And then as soon as you fill out that form, or not as soon as, but when we start, which is going to be October 2nd, you're going to get information from me, but you've got to fill out that form. And that is found in the bundle, in the file that says bonus. So definitely look for that. So Marcy says, how will we know when you have other webinars? I do email out. It is helpful if you add me as a contact, like if you have Gmail or whatever, drag my email. If you have a promotions tab, drag it into the regular inbox, because otherwise I know I've had some people like not even know that a webinar that they were waiting for was going to happen. So definitely add me as the contact, drag me over to the to your regular inbox, and I do email out and kind of let you know ahead of time. I'm going to take a break for a couple of weeks after this set, but I do want to do some revising and editing workshops in October. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Good, Tara. I'm glad you were able to get some good ideas. Good, good. Laura says she bought the center bundle yesterday. Absolutely, Laura. Just fill out that bonus sheet. As soon as you unzip the file, you should see it. It just says bonus, and that's how you put your stuff in. The group is open to anybody who has purchased or will purchase before midnight Eastern time, Eastern US time, on September 22nd. At that time, the huge discount does go away. You'll see what the price is going to be when you look at the product page. The huge discount goes away and the bonus is going to be removed from that bundle. So make sure you've got this date in your calendar. Michelle, yes. So Michelle, just email me if you did not get the slides. I did send them out ahead of time, but again, it's totally possible that they didn't come through. Good, Rachel. I'm so glad this was helpful. So Samantha, I differentiate my word work groups. I use Words Their Way, and they have, so that program has this spelling assessment, and you give them the assessment. It kind of tells you where you should start them in the program, and then you start giving them these sorts. And the different groups, this is separate from centers. This is just kind of a tangent. The different groups, like I meet with them in small groups, and again, the program kind of guides me in doing that. Sarah says, if we buy the literacy bundle with writing included, can we still join the group? So Sarah, I'm not sure. Are you talking about the comprehension one? The comprehension is totally different from that. I do have a comprehension bundle with the writing, but those are that's like whole group lessons, like your core instruction, and this is something different. So that's totally different. It wouldn't make sense for you to join this if you didn't have this stuff. Okay, so Taylor says, do you ever have problems with students being upset with what center they're having to miss to come to guided reading? Yeah, occasionally, more so I would say at the beginning of the year, but they know that they're going to get to it eventually. So I'll just say, hey, you're going to get to this on Tuesday or whatever. And then I just kind of ignore it. If I don't make a big deal of it, then they just kind of get over it. Lisa, good question. Do you also have the students read independently as a whole group so you can do conferences and strategy groups? Yes, definitely. Centers is not the only time that they get to read independently. A, because I think that sort of quiet, calm environment is really necessary for some kids, and Centers does not always provide that. And B, because I do want time where I'm just doing conferences, even if it's just for like 10 minutes, 5 minutes in kindergarten. I need that dedicated time. So yes, good question, Lisa. I definitely do. So Luce, I know the editable thing is a problem because I use fonts and graphics. They have copyright agreements, so I can't make the stuff editable to translate to Spanish. I am so sorry about that. Taylor, when you call back students for guided reading, when do you have them finish the center they were at? So Taylor, they're actually missing that center altogether, but they're going to have an opportunity to probably do the same activities like later on in the week, so it's not such a big deal. So it's not necessarily that I have something where they have to do, they have to finish this one thing at the center. There's different choices. So if they don't get to something, that's okay. And we'll probably revisit it later on in the year. Okay, so Emily says I teach in a self-contained first, second grade center who are reading pre-A through D reading levels. What centers you suggest? Emily, I would definitely say the kindergarten ones. Okay, when students are called to a group, do they miss a center? Yes, Debbie, they do miss one center, but I set it up so that like they get to that. They're not always missing same center and they get to that center, 2 days later or whatever. Let's see. Ellen says, I am feeling the time crunch. How do you fit in Readers and Writers Workshop and have such a long time for guided reading literacy centers? So I haven't been able to have so much time every single year, Ellen. So writing workshop, I like to have 40 minutes if I can for that. The reading workshop, we've got like a 10-minute mini lesson, then, just 10 minutes for reading, just so they have something. And so then whatever you have left is what I would put into centers. Of course, I know you have like a read aloud and other stuff, but that's how I fit it in. I just keep reading workshop like relatively short because again, they're getting some time to read in centers, and writing workshop, 40 minutes if you can. Jacqueline, interesting and helpful. Jacqueline, you are welcome to take this and like use it in your classroom in Spanish or whatever. I would just hate for you to like purchase if you weren't going to be able to use all the printable materials because I can't make those editable, unfortunately. So of course that's up to you. Maria, if you have questions after the webinar, just respond to one of those reminder emails. It'll get directly into my inbox. Diana says, how long is center time, guided reading during the day? That depends, but typically for me, the sweet spot is like 40 to 45 minutes. Okay, so I do want to wrap things up. Samantha says she has more questions. So Samantha, 2 things. First of all, I am going to do a Facebook Live on Thursday. I will email you Thursday morning. Make sure to like add me as a contact or drag my emails over into your regular inbox so that you get it. But Thursday morning, I'm going to email and I'm going to say, hey, tonight I'm doing a Facebook Live, and in the Facebook Live, bring your questions. So if I've missed something, which I know there's been a lot of people on here and I'm sure I've missed some things, bring your questions to that. I'm happy to answer them. We will have more time then because I'm not obviously doing a huge presentation first. So definitely bring your questions there. You are welcome to email me, but I do feel like it's beneficial for like other people to hear questions just because it might help them think through something. So I would love for you to bring them to that Facebook Live. Thank you guys so much for being here. Again, we'll touch base before the Facebook Live on Thursday. You're welcome to email me. Stuff is coming to your inbox, links and all that. If you do have questions, just hit reply. Thank you again so much for being here, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.